Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about today. First and foremost, let's talk about the fatal shooting of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton in South Carolina as he was shot by a store owner for what they believe to be a shoplifting incident, which winded up not being the case. So we'll talk about the latest in that case. Also, let's talk about the third party effect. Are Dems trying to control the narrative for Black voters? That's the question as they put out information saying a third party candidate would just throw everything into craziness, into madness. And that the Democratic Party said, we do not need a third party. Is that in the best interest of Black people? We'll have that discussion. Also, the NAACP has sent out a travel warning for Blacks. Some say it's for Black voters. The NAACP saying it may be for both. We'll talk a little bit about that. And later, I got that conversation I wanted to have today, the case for representation. How important is it for us to be represented in media and other spaces? I'll share with you some thoughts from one psychologist and also, of course, get what you have to say. So, folks, we got a lot to talk about. So stay with me. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the conversation. Big shout out to my online culture crew. Good to see you. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to hear from so many of you as we have these important discussions. And of course, this is Wednesday, folks. So, you know, I'm joined by my sister, Suzette Speaks, who is an attorney and TV host, to give us her insights about all of these big conversations that we're having. All right, let's jump right into it because we got a lot to cover today. First and foremost, y'all may have seen, if you follow me on my social media, you can follow me at The Real Faraji and on Instagram and at Faraji on Twitter. I put out a story that really caught my attention and I wanted us to at least make note of it because it might be a story that this serves as the tipping point in a lot of different things. This is the story of the fatal shooting of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton. This is a very unfortunate story, and this is a story about both race and guns in America. Let me just share with you some of the details around this story of the fatal shooting of this 14-year-old little brother. This was coming from NBC News. Take a look at this, folks. This is about Mr. Rick Chow, who is an Asian store owner. He's 58 years old. He was arrested on Monday, and charged with murder in the death of Cyrus Carmack-Belton. According to the report, Carmack-Belton entered the convenience store on Park Lane Road in Columbia around 8 p.m. And at some point, the teenager, Chow, and the owner's son started arguing, according to police, Mr. Lott, who didn't detail what led to the dispute. Eventually, Carmack-Belton left the store and took off running. According to the police report, the owner, armed with a pistol, and his son chased the teen toward a nearby apartment complex, adding that Carmack-Belton fell at one point but got back up. Mr. Child's son said Carmack-Belton had a gun, which is when the owner shot him in the back as he was running away. Authorities later recovered a gun next to the teen's body, but the sheriff said there was no evidence the teen ever pointed the weapon at Chow or his son. That is Mr. Chow, Rick Chow there in the picture, folks. And he is responsible for shooting 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton in the back while chasing after him for an alleged shoplifting incident, which the police has gone on record to say never happened. Let me bring my sister Suzette Speaks into this as we talk about this unfortunate situation. Suzette, first and foremost, good afternoon. How you feeling this afternoon, Suzette?
Good to be back. I miss my culture crew. Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me as always each and every Wednesday. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about this. First and foremost, this thing really touched a nerve for me because I put it out on my Twitter. I said the store owner is Asian. The victim was Black. We are in a situation right now. We've been talking about this on this space. I know you've been talking about it, and other folks have been talking about guns in America. And I put it out there. We don't have a gun problem, Suzette. We have a mindset problem. We have a people problem. You know, we can talk about guns, we can talk about policies, but before any of that happens, I'm looking at the place, I'm looking at the point where a person like a Mr. Child thinks that it is okay, thinks that it is appropriate to run after somebody for simply for what he believed was a shoplifting situation with a gun. It's not a thing like, you know, this is a 14-year-old. You have you and your son, you already outmanned this little boy. But then at the end of the day, you're going to run after him with a gun. And then while he's running away, no longer being a threat, Suzette, you shoot him in the back. What the hell is this?
Yeah, this is one of the saddest stories. I just came back from vacay and opened my email to see yet another tragic headline. No, you guys, this is not a case that we've already had. This is a new one, but the facts, as you've laid out, Faraji, sound so very familiar. Here we have kind of a conflation or a nexus of race, gun culture, even as you've stated out, mental state in terms of stereotypes we are seeing among even other minorities towards Blackness. And we want to make clear, and I do want to start out by saying there was no shoplifting incident. According to the sheriff, there was an idea in the shop owner's head, Mr. Child's head, that this young man had taken water. And we now know, according to police and according to what they have put out in statements, he did not steal anything. Now, that being one of the main facts I wanted to make sure we highlight, we also have to look at the appropriate use of force and when there is excessive use of force by a citizen towards another citizen. Again, we have race as a component here in this story, 14-year-old Black boy who went inside a store. And the part that really befuddles me, Faraji, is the chase. Because once he has left the store, he has not posed any bodily harm and bodily threat to the store owner and his son. As you stated in that kind of rundown of the facts, they started chasing him, the store owner and his son, down the street into an apartment complex where they now allege they saw some sort of weapon. Now, it has been reported that at the scene, after he was shot, there was a weapon found, but there is no evidence that he had turned the weapon or posed any threat with the weapon towards the shop owner and his son. Of course, stories are going to start to come out and change as everyone lawyers up, but we want to make sure the innocence of this person is emphasized, that he is humanized, that he had a family, that he is a real person that had a case of deadly mistaken, identity when it comes to what the shop owner thought was his right to stop him by use of lethal force. I'm glad that this sheriff and that the prosecutorial team did not hesitate and immediately arrested him and charged him with attempted, murder.
And that's going to be, is it going to be premeditated because there was a chase, there was time between the alleged incident and the fact that Mr. Child and his son decided to run after him and all of that? Is it considered to be premeditated murder, or is it first degree murder? How would they charge him?
Well, there is definitely going to come out in terms of the facts, in terms of mind state, in terms of statements that he gave the police directly after the incident. I'm curious to see, as we get more information that comes out, what he actually said happened to police. Now, we can get filtered stories now through attorneys, etc. But the initial statements of the son indicated that, again, they thought the impetus was shoplifting. Notwithstanding, that is not an appropriate reason to use deadly force ever. So with regards to the continuation of the act, following the young man outside, chasing him down, and then deciding to shoot, I think there's a lot that can be made in terms of an argument towards premeditation, as you've kind of pointed out here. But we have to make sure with the facts that we are presented, as of this moment, it seems like there could be a strong argument towards that, but we have to wait till all the facts come out.
Folks, we got to take a quick pause, Suzette. When we come forward, we'll continue to talk about the details of this and, of course, get our take from our online culture crew and just really talk about the fact that we are at a place in this country where guns in America seems to be the order of the day. Let's continue the conversation on the other side. Stay with us. We got a lot to cover here on the culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the fatal shooting of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton, who was a 14-year-old. There's the picture of the little brother. Take a look at that. This brother walked into a convenience store down in South Carolina on Monday, had some exchange of words between the store owner, Mr. Chow, and his son, left the convenience store. And according to the police reports, once he left, he took off running. And that created the problem where Mr. Chow and his son thought it was appropriate for them. There's the picture of Mr. Chow. Thought it was appropriate for him and his son to run this brother down into an apartment complex and to shoot him in the back, folks. In the back. While this brother is running away, no longer serving as a threat. Now, according to Mr. Chow and his son, Cyrus Belton, Cyrus had a gun on him. Police said that they found a gun near the body of little brother Cyrus. But they did not show any evidence that the gun was pointed at Mr. Chow and his son, that it was... If he had a gun on him, then why is he running if they had a gun? I mean, if he was as violent, and I'm trying to paint this picture, and I want to bring Suzette back into this, folks. If they're trying to paint Cyrus as this gun-toting black teen who steals, then he would not be running. He would not have gotten shot in the back if he was the threatening one. And that's the place that we're seeing right now, that he was shot in the back. And if you shoot someone in the back, that's a clear sign and indicator that they are the ones that they will become the victim, that you become the threat. So Suzette, this case right here is so disturbing, and I wanted to elevate this case because I think it speaks volumes about where we are in this country, especially around the issue of guns. that now people just feel like, you know what? It's open season on black teenagers. I read another story. This was in your neck of the woods. I just read this earlier today. A white male who was in a traffic jam because of a protest about, I think, housing inequality down in Miami, steps out of the car with a gun and approaches a group of black teenagers who were protesting and tried to use some force, tried to use some intimidation with the gun. Of course, all of this is caught on camera. Bystander, videoed the whole situation. But it's just a simple fact that that's where we are right now in this country. Like, you could just, okay, I don't like you, you don't like me, with no thought, with anything. There's no thought about, you know what, maybe this is not the right move. Maybe I need to make a better decision. Let me handle the situation better. It's just like, let me go to the gun. And I think in the case of Cyrus, little brother Cyrus, it's like, if he steals some water, I mean, that's the hardest part about this. For something so small, you can lose your life.
It's scary.
Something so small, it's beyond scary. And if you have children in your family, if you have a son or daughter that age, niece or nephew, grandson, granddaughter, just something so small, like you could just tell them, hey, go down to the store, just pick up something, and it's just one little interaction and go boom, it can just create a fatal situation. It's hard to wrap my mind around. Do you think that this is going to lead to people, and I know that the relationship between Black and Asians, especially in our community, is a tense relationship, to say the least. Do you think this is going to create some firestorm between those two communities?
Well, I do think it complicates it, Faraji. I think you pointed out something that I think is one of the larger parts of the story that people are not really sure how to cover, which is the component of race and not being between, a white vigilante and a Black victim, but an Asian person who perpetrated this crime against a Black youth. And I think with some of the history that we've seen in terms of the climate at large, we sometimes are perplexed, I think, within the Black community when other communities of color perpetrate crimes against us and vice versa. It seems as if we have been trying to, I think, in kind of major political circles to try to create the synergistic ideals of intersectionality. We all in this together. You also are oppressed. You also have, various, systematic challenges and roadblocks that are placed within the government, within business, within the structures in our country that kind of hold you to a certain standard. But when we see a situation when we're looking at one another as the possible threat, or even sometimes when we've seen the stories reported where there was a bunch of crimes against Asian people by Black people, there was a curiosity and a kind of confusion as to why there seems to be this animus. But oftentimes we don't really want to talk about the presence in our communities of other minority-owned businesses and what the relationships are like within those communities with those businesses. It's not all negative, but oftentimes there has been this kind of underlying tension where, people who set up shop, if you will, in Black communities don't always respect or even understand, or sometimes have an open bridge for dialogue with that community where their businesses, serve. So there is a lot of complexity in terms of the history there with regards to the relationship between, these brothers and sisters who are also, immigrant populations as well that come into Black communities and kind of form this kind of business community. But I think beyond that, I think this is a story specifically about a vigilante individual, someone who thought it was within their right to take this type of lethal force against someone who they thought was a shoplifter. And I think that is the crux of why this is so shocking and why he has to be held to account. I want to reemphasize that the sheriff of the Richland County has said, Sheriff Leon Lott told reporters in a briefing last Monday, we have no evidence that he stole anything whatsoever. So I
or
think
evidence, and actually, Suzette, we gotta throw this in there. He has no evidence that he used the gun in any threatening manner. If they, I think they're still trying to get the details about, the gun situation.
right.
But the sheriff did say that there is no evidence of him pointing the gun at Mr. Child and his son. So, all right, let me get a couple of quick thoughts, and then we got to take another quick pause here. Tyron D39, thank you for checking in and welcome to the culture. You said we just going to have to give these murderers our money. These communities hate us. Stop going to these nail salons, beauty shops, restaurants, laundromats. That's how deep the relationship is.
I don't feel that way, but I understand his sentiment.
I know, I know, and look, and that's what I'm saying. That's how deep the relationship is. That we go to the beauty salons, we go to the laundromats, we go to, we get our food from Asian businesses. And, even though this is one incident, this is not like a part of a larger string of issues and incidents. But we know that the relationship is so contentious that even when we do these things, there's still this air of intimidation and this air of suspicion. You go into and I'm not saying for all, of course not, but I have been in places where I've gone into a beauty supply store and the Asian woman is looking at me looking a little crazy, you know what I mean? A little suspicious, kind of watching her eyes and things. And again, this situation just fits right in the middle of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it only adds to what you're talking about, this sense of it's you over there, I'm over here, and we will go to war if necessary. It's a very, very contentious relationship. Folks, we got to take another quick pause. When I come back, I'm going to share more of what you got to say around this case, and we'll have more conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the fatal shooting of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton down in South Carolina, who was shot and killed in the back by a store owner, Mr. Rick Child, 58, and his son, who were attempting to, quote unquote, deal with the situation of Cyrus possibly, allegedly shoplifting from a convenience store and ended up in murdering this little brother. Keenan, let's just put, I want to make sure that folks understand. I need to see the picture of this little brother. This is Cyrus Carmack-Belton. I want us to put that up there so people can understand, like, this little brother here. You can take me out the shot, bro. Thank you. This little brother here is a black youth that can be seen in any part of America. You probably have him in your family. And I'm taking this moment to I want you to soak in. I want you to take in the look on his face, his eyes, his beautiful smile. It just takes one interaction, one altercation, family. Come on, crew. Y'all got to be with me on this. Because this is, I see so many of you checking in and saying you're tired of this crap. Yolanda, you said, so sad that we as blacks continue to support this prejudiced people and their businesses. That store owner always argued with black customers. Karen, you said Cyrus Carmack was another black child murdered, shot in the back due to racial profiling. When a back is turned, there is no threat. The killers deserve the same fate as Ahmaud Arbery's killers. I just want y'all to take a look at this little brother. McCole, you checked in. Good to hear from you. You said, I am well. I am grieved by the murder of Cyrus, another black boy murdered. I am saddened. This is what we're dealing with in America, folks. Shalenda, you said this reminds me of Latasha Harlan shot dead at age 15 by Soon Jadu, a Korean-American convenience store owner. Dude was tried and convicted of voluntary manslaughter. This sparked lots of riots. You're talking about that famous case here in Los Angeles, Shalenda. You're absolutely right. That's the little sister I was thinking about. Let's bring Suzette back into the fold. Suzette, this is hard, man. This is getting really, it's and I know that as those of us in the media, we're supposed to have an objective view, you know what I'm saying, an unbiased view, but this is very, very hard. You can't just report, at least, and I'm trying my best to just present the facts. Let's have the conversation that I think is important. But it's hard, man, especially as I see my son growing up. I'm like, man, oh man, what is the world going to look like for black men and black boys and black girls in the next 5 years? I'm not talking about 10, I'm not talking about 20. I'm talking about in the next 5 years, folks. What is this world? What is this country? Let's bring it home. What is the United States of America going to look like in the next 5 years for black boys and black girls in this country? What is that going to look like?
It's very scary, Faraji. That's why we need, especially as we get into conversations, as we get into my backyard here in Florida, the removal of African-American history, the removal of ideology that is not like this so-called right-wing so-called mainstream. They have made it mainstream, has given people from all different walks of life this idea that they can marginalize the marginalized. And what is really crazy is that when it comes from other, marginalized groups, we've seen some attacks that have been perpetrated by people of Hispanic background claiming white supremacy. We have seen, people from other communities of color, aligning themselves. I'm thinking about Enrique Tarrio and others who are actually like Hispanic and somehow taking hold of this idea that there is a superiority they should feel and an anti-blackness that seems to permeate, kind of quietly among, those who are susceptible to this kind of climate that we're seeing, where it's okay to say, no more diversity inclusion, nothing that is going to so-called, taint our kids. No, we don't have to teach African-American history because indirectly you're saying we aren't American enslavement for it to be a part of the tapestry, although we built this country in terms of all of the economics that go back to the enslavement of Africans until now. So when we are looking at the changes of how the news media talks about, Black related issues, how we've seen past public officials and presidents kind of dog whistle people into believing those people are not American enough. They're not like you. You're different. It can lull people into this kind of really sick, deceptive, covert, maybe racial bias where they're not even aware. What strikes me in this reporting is that the detectives have already said there was no racial motivation. I'm like, how can you already say that?
Right.
And I don't know. Again, I have to say that we have to let the evidence speak for itself. But to say that there was no link between some type of preconceived notion about this Black boy and this Black body, doing something, quote, wrong, and what the shop owner, Mr. Chow, thought was justifiable retaliation comes from somewhere. It is not just about, oh, I thought this person stole from me. I would argue that there's probably something a little deeper seated in his behavior. Again, I can only speculate. I'm going to let the evidence speak for itself. But there are many who also speculate that this seems to be above and beyond someone protecting his store property. And I think
way above and
about those conversations.
Suzanne, I could not agree with you more, sis. I could not agree with you more. That's why I said that this is a mindset problem. This is a people problem. Where there's so much prejudice, there's so much bias, there's so much hatred that people we want to act like we're better than what we are at this moment, and we can be, but I don't think so at this moment. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that we have to face the ugliness and the reality of who we have become and what we are becoming as we move forward, especially in the area of race, especially in the area of guns. This is, and I couldn't agree with you more. This is something deep-seated. Maybe Mr. Child was victimized before by a young Black male. I don't know. Maybe his son was beat up by some young Black boys. I don't know. But the fact is that it came down to this. And that's why when we have the conversation about biases and when we talk about racism and everything, this is why racism is so destructive. This is why the culture of this country can be so destructive, because it's the seed is planted years before an incident like this happens. I bet you if you look at Mr. Child's life or his son's life, somewhere along the line, they had a negative experience with a Black child, a Black boy, and it manifested itself in the killing of Cyrus. I bet you. Somewhere along the line, this dude, Mr. Child, was kind of mentally, emotionally conditioned to look at Black boys as a threat. So we can have the conversation about gun control, gun reform laws, and all of that all day. And I said this yesterday, and I'm saying it again today. You got to look at the culture. If we don't change the culture around how we see Black boys, how we preserve, how we are serious about protecting and preserving Black bodies, it doesn't matter about gun control laws and policy and all of that stuff, because the culture still will lean toward the simple idea that Black lives don't matter.
Yeah, we have to be careful. And again, it's such a delicate conversation because we tend to think anti-Blackness only lies within one group of people. But the truth is it can lie in other minority groups as well, right? In other cultural groups, right? And I've seen it here. Obviously, in Florida, we have such a diverse tapestry of people. But this idea that, Black bodies, Black people, Black thoughts, Black history should be marginalized and relegated for them, not us. It's not a part of the
right.
whole. It is an insipid way to kind of create an environment where you yourself, and again, other minorities may even believe, and this is not, broad-based, but there can be people within other groups that now think it's okay, right, to say that this person's life is just less valuable. And again, they might not even say it out loud, but through their behavior, through their actions, through how they speak to their fellow human beings, we can see this kind of, as you call it, mindset that can seep in, and we have to call it out regardless of who the racial background seems to be for the day. But we really need to say it out loud so that we can address it, so that others can take stock of where they are. Is this how I feel? Is this something that maybe I possess, maybe subconsciously, unconsciously? It's really deep. And sometimes it hurts to kind of acknowledge within oneself. But we do need our brothers and sisters within other groups to say that this can happen to them also. And this is something that we can all deal with together, to eradicate it, to say, this is something that maybe I have harbored and maybe I was wrong, or maybe this is something I didn't even realize, I think, or a way I position myself politically even. So we have to be okay with saying that, everybody's not a monolith. One group is not pitted against the other. That's why I'm very careful of don't go to their stored language. I'm not with that. I would take people as individuals and allow people the opportunity to be educated and engaged so that they do evolve and grow if this is an issue for that person. So we got to be very careful about painting communities at large. There are people who are allies, and I'm talking about practicing real allyship, across the board. So we have to be very careful. I take people on an individual basis, but it's something that we must also acknowledge that sometimes it is not only, within white spaces that we can see this behavior and this thinking. And no matter where it is, we should call it out so that it can be properly dealt with and addressed.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come back, to get more thoughts from you as the crew, and of course, get some final remarks from Suzette about this case. Also, folks, as we move forward, we want to definitely talk about what's going on with the NAACP and their travel warning for Black folks down in Florida, how some saying that this is not necessarily about travel, but also about Black voters. So we'll have that conversation. So we still got a lot to cover, so stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape. With me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We just want to get some final thoughts and remarks from you, from Suzette, as we've been talking about the fatal shooting of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton. Suzette, what let me ask you, what are some of the things that you think that we need to kind of consider? Of course, this is still very early on in the investigation. There's still some unanswered questions. We know that the sheriff has shown some sense of being unbiased in this case by saying, no, this little brother did not do what they say that he did. So is this a singular isolated incident where we're going to see some justice prevail? And there's going to be some closure for Cyrus's family? Or is this going to open us up to a larger conversation? Because a lot of the crew members right now, Suzette, are like, look, we got enough on our plate. Now it's the Asian community coming after us, then we want to have to start thinking of some new strategies on how we're going to relate to this group.
Yeah, I don't think I would extrapolate as wide as saying the entire Asian community. Obviously, this is a very sickening and sad incident that I'm glad to see the community having been galvanized by such a tragic event, kind of rally around, this particular family. They have also been protesting at the store itself. I am grateful to see that a prosecutor has moved so quickly to charge this individual with murder, and that the sheriff, as you mentioned, Sheriff Lofton, has been so empathetic and compassionate, looking at these facts, saying that even if he did what he was thought to have been doing, which he was not, should he have been killed for it? No, this was an unreasonable response. This was an unreasonable chase. To chase someone down and shoot them in the back is unlawful. Right. So I'm so glad we've seen the wheels of justice, as we will see kind of as the case unfolds, continue to turn. But the speed at which they have at least said this was wrong, this was against the law, and we're going to take action. I'm happy to see that, the folks in Columbia, South Carolina can at least see some motion, that the wheels of justice are turning. But again, they move very slowly, and it's left to be seen as the case unfolds, what will be the outcome. But I'm praying for this family, like so many of you watching, and then I just pray that the prosecutor will continue to do its job, that office, and seek justice on behalf of this family. Absolutely.
I want to just share this very quickly. Jacqueline Boateng, you checked in and said some AAPI biases are inherently leaning toward Caucasian ideals rather than unity with all minorities. The same can be said of some Hispanics and Blacks leaning towards Caucasian ideals too. GOP likes. And others are saying, Linda, you checked in. Linda Isaac, you said, I live here in Columbia. Weather, it looks like that comment was released. Okay. Official Sneaker, you said, like John Henry Clark said, we do not have any friends in this country. We need to stop trying to save a burning house. We need to start advocating for group solidarity. I feel like as we close out on this part of the conversation, is that this, even though this may be an isolated incident, you cannot, use a broad stroke to say that every Asian American feels the same way as Mr. Chow. But for Black folks that have been, as you know, been feeling the pain and the brunt of a lot of these cultural wars, the gun violence, and all of the other stuff that's currently happening right now, every incident matters. Mm-hmm. Every interaction is important. And so every outcome is going to be vital. That's just where we are. And for anybody who says to us, oh, y'all are just kind of like, getting emotional, you're just jumping to conclusions, you aren't in a position to say that when everything else is coming at you. So I trust and believe. I get the feeling like, is there any, we can't keep taking the hits. I'm right there with you. But I do feel like, you know what, let's see how this thing plays out. But more importantly, I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to really look at the relationship between Blacks and the Asians and say, okay, this could happen in any major city in America. It don't have to happen in Columbia, just in Columbia. It can happen in Baltimore, Miami, Los Angeles, New York, Philly, Detroit, wherever. It can happen. And that's the great concern that I have, Suzette.
That's why we need more dialogue, Faraji. That's why I'm not an island. I'm not a person that says we can do it on our own. I'm very big on coalition building. We have more in common to me. Again, there are people within each community that have a different, political ilk. And I can say that, with the commentary that you just read, of course, everybody does not vote the same way. Everybody doesn't feel the same way. But there are a lot of allies within other groups. And I think we get a lot more done when we have open dialogue and we are working together towards common solutions. That's my take.
And guess what? It would be awesome to see that, it may not come from the older generation of Asian Americans, but it might come from the younger generation of Asian Americans, where somebody is saying this is not right, this was not good. That, you know what, we're standing in solidarity. We are standing in solidarity with the family of Cyrus Carmack-Belton. It would be good. It would be good. Because you can't tell me that in this day and time in this country, outside of being Black, if you're a part of any other community, you can't say, well, I don't understand why Black people are upset. I don't understand why Black people are hurt. Why are they mad? That means that you are living in an isolated America. You're not living in the United States of America. You're living in an individual state of America. So we will have to see how this plays out. But my heart, my prayers, our condolences go out to the family of Cyrus Carmack-Belton. Folks, we got to take another pause when we come forward. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about what the NAACP has warned for Black travelers coming to the state of Florida, either to visit or to live. We're going to check in with Suzette. She's going to probably give us some more details, some of the back story of this situation, and how they're saying that this travel advisory is not necessarily about Black people coming in, but about bringing some solidarity to Black voters. And that's going to be an interesting mix, considering the Democrats have already thrown out there, hey, if you put a third-party candidate in the mix for the 2024 election, we would be the victor. So it's a lot to consider. Let's talk about it in the next hour. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
On the Black Star Network. If you are just joining us, I appreciate you for checking in and wanting to be a part of the conversation. Big shout out to my online culture crew, man. We got so many new watchers and so many new folks that are joining the chat right now on YouTube as we're streaming live right there. We're also streaming on blackstarnetwork.com. And of course, you can find us streaming on Amazon News. But big shout out to all of the online culture crew. Big shout out to all of the folks, the legacy culture crew members and the new culture crew members. I'm just so happy that the conversation is so robust right now on YouTube. And folks, make sure you continue to post your thoughts, because we try to get as many of your takes on these conversations as much as possible. And this is just absolutely amazing. I want to throw out something. My sister Corinna Denise, who is also one of our contributors here on the culture, she brought it up. And Suzette, she said it real cool. You know Corinna, Suzette. Y'all be rolling in the same circles sometimes, right?
Yes, I've met her. Yes, so flow in the building.
See, y'all be rolling together. But Corinna said something that I think this just kind of sums up where we are in this country. She said, quote, "We are in a state of emergency in this entire country, no matter which state you live in." Read that shit again.
Listen, y'all be worried about Florida, but Florida sets a lot of the trends. That's why we got
setting a lot of trends.
It's crazy.
It's setting a lot of trends, and I could not agree with Corinna enough, because that's the place we're in, regardless of what state you live in. And we can say, well, my home state, we don't have those problems. No, every state in America has a problem with Black folks. And we're in that state of emergency, which is why it leads us to this next conversation. Back to your state, Florida. And look, this is crazy, because I have peoples down in Florida, Suzette, and they literally have been calling us like, man, I think we need to leave Florida. And I'm hearing
talking about it. It's people talking about it. It's not a joke. People are talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're talking about is this travel warning that the NAACP has put out, saying that, well, let me just share with you. Let me just throw this quote up from NBC News, folks. This is coming from NBC, and Mr. Leon Russell, who serves as the chairman of the NAACP National Board of Directors, he lives there in Tampa. He said that the travel advisory, let's post this quote on the screen, please, that the travel advisory was an informational and strategic tactic to galvanize Black voters, especially Black men, against Republican Governor Ron DeSantis.
That's huge. That's huge.
Okay, that's huge, but you can't put no travel advisory out in that type of context without people taking it and running with it, right? He said this is what Mr. Russell said. He said, "Let me be clear. We're not calling for a boycott or a travel ban." He said, "We're simply saying to Black people who come to the state or who are thinking about coming to the state that you need to be aware of what's going on here, and you need to think about how you're going to be impacted by this hate and cruelty that is being generated. You need to consider whether or not you're going to be safe." Okay. Here's what the advisory reads, folks. It says Florida, this is coming from the NAACP, they said Florida is openly hostile toward African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ plus individuals. Before traveling to Florida, please understand that the state of Florida devalues and marginalizes the contributions of and the challenges faced by African Americans and other communities of color.
Yeah.
Is that what now you're in the Democratic
Miami
circle,
represent, let's go.
Come on, you're in the circles down there, right? You're in the Democratic spaces as one of the women leaders for the city of Miami and for the state of Florida. You're in those spaces. Do you think this travel advisory was a good strategic tactic?
Absolutely. I think as those of us who have been around political circles here, as you stated, in the state of Florida, I've worked in state government, statewide agencies. I have worked on the ground level, and, full disclosure, I was paid as far as being a member of the staff of the Biden campaign, recently in the last election. So I'm really connected when it comes to a lot of what's going on and have my ear to the ground. I know several people who were quoted in that article that you just read, where they're talking about why this travel advisory was issued. Now, we have to put it in context, Faraji. As far as my research has gone, I've only seen the NAACP do this twice before this. So this is a really kind of very strong move in terms of trying to get national eyes on what's happening here in Florida. Yes, they have said that they also have wanted this to be a galvanizing moment for Black voters in Florida. But it seems as if, Ron DeSantis has been doing, what many believe is kind of dismantling education in Florida little bit by little bit. And it's not about just Black issues. It's about civil liberties, right? And your individual right to your education, to how you handle your business, to what you want your kids to learn. And he has been very successful just chipping away little by little through his strong hand of influence over the state legislature. We know that he just signed a bill that legitimized or that allowed DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on the college campuses across the state-funded ones, to be completely wiped out. So we have already heard about what his plans were for AP, African American history, taking that out of being offered, or having the college board, the issuing body or the administrator of this program, rewrite it so that it is quote unquote less quote unquote woke, and all these kind of dog whistles and tropes that are basically what has been an open attack, as the NAACP has said in this advisory, against Black people, against other people of color, against LGBTQ communities and others. So this was a strong rebuke for what we have seen now having been a blueprint for other states. That's why Florida really matters. What Ron DeSantis has gotten away with here, several other states now have also been introducing legislation that has really been handcuffing what can be taught in classes as it pertains to Black people and Black American history. This is dangerous territory we're in. And I applaud the NAACP for trying to create such a broad-based conversation through this advisory to say, hey, Florida people, we got to wake up. When I look at the voter turnout in the last couple elections, it has not been that great. We're looking at about 3 million Black voters, according to the last census here in Florida, out of the 14 million eligible voters. So that's a good 13-14% of us who can make a huge difference in who wins both statewide and local and even national elections. But we have kind of not stepped into that power fully and embraced it. And we're hoping that some kind of measure, such as what the NAACP put out, can start to awaken this great giant and say to Florida voters, as well as we said, internationally, this was covered, that there's something really wrong with the political climate where you live. You need to become much more engaged than we have been. And I think it, in fact, has started creating that buzz, that hopefully snowball effect for our voters coming up and getting ready for 2024, because that's what we really need here.
Look, I got so much I want to talk to you about as it relates to this, is that I've been waiting all week to have this conversation with you, because I do see some strategy in putting this out, because I do feel like this is a way to disrupt one of the bigger money makers for the state of Florida, which is tourism. At a time when, this is summertime, folks are traveling, folks are going to be looking to kind of go to the warmest places around the country. So this strategy could end up disrupting tourism if Black people sign on to it. If Black people listen. Now, because this could be a form of economic boycott, because this will stop millions of dollars from coming into the state if Black people listen. But then there's another element I want to get your take on. We got to take another pause. When we come forward, I want to continue the conversation with Suzette as we talk about this NAACP travel warning for Black crew. I want to hear what you got to say around this. Make sure you post your comments on YouTube as we're streaming live. And of course, stay tuned. You're tuned into The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
hatred on the streets. A horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about the NAACP travel advisory, travel warning for blacks, saying that before you come to the state of Florida, that you better be very informed about what's going on. You better be better have the understanding that the state of Florida do not value black lives. That you understand that the state of Florida is in chaos as it relates to its relationship with black people. That you better understand that you may not be safe in the state of Florida. Woo! Some very, very serious situation here. As one of the our oldest civil rights organizations is telling us not to come to Florida and be green and be naive and to act as if that it's all about sunshine and palm trees. Woo! Suzette, it ain't all about sunshine and palm trees down in Florida, is it?
No, but I think, and I want to also add to what you just said, because Chairman Leon Russell has said it is not calling for a boycott per se.
Not calling for it.
It's like kind of splitting hairs. I get it, but I'm gonna put it out there because he says, and I quote, "No, let me be clear. We're not calling for a boycott or a travel ban," says Mr. Russell. We're saying to black people who come to the state or are thinking about coming to the state that you need to be aware of what's going on here, and you need to think about how you're impacted by this hate and cruelty that is being
hold on, Suzette.
So it is not a travel ban call. Let's just be clear.
Wait a minute, hold on, Suzette. Look, I get it. It's like somebody saying, look, I'm not telling you not to do this, but I'm just letting you know, here are the reasons why you should not do this.
The NAACP does not want Florida to suffer economically, is what they're saying. Now, again, this may be a byproduct of what they've done, but in their minds, they are trying to highlight, because, again, there's a lot of black people that work in tourism, a lot of black people that work in service industries. So,
but here's what I'm saying. And I really wouldn't be mad. I want to let the crew. Do y'all think, would y'all be mad if the NAACP is strategically saying, hey, don't come to Florida, as a way to galvanize it? I mean, this is what Mr. Russell said too, that he wanted to galvanize black voters. Well, if you want to galvanize black voters, then you want to hit the opposition and get a couple of punches in on the opposition. Why not do it some level? And I'm not saying it's got to be a full-blown economic boycott, but there could be a slowing down of tourists coming into the state that could dry up some of the money. I mean, I would not think that would be unheard of. Matter of fact, I would think that's a damn good idea, actually. considering the fact that how DeSantis is moving. Why we got to be tepid when DeSantis is moving very bold in the state of Florida?
This was a strong move. I do believe that they had the power to just say they, put out a statement. Oh, we don't agree with the policies here. Oh, we wanted to, put out a press release that was combating some of what the governor was putting out. It was a strong move. Let's not, kind of minimize it, because they're not saying they want a ban, but they do want to highlight the impact of the policies of Governor Ron DeSantis on the people of the state of Florida, specifically Black, brown, and LGBTQ people. So I think it was a very skillful move for Raji, because it had the conversation going from its inception. There are people who are not as, and we've talked about it here on this show, connected politically as they should be. But because of this headline, because of this power play, if you will, there are people now who are on the margins of this critical voting group here in Florida who are now saying, wait a minute, we knew that, every time we see a bill come through, there's another headline. There's another headline. It gets lost. People are literally like with whiplash, tired of every day. Something else Governor DeSantis does. Something else that came down that affects Black and brown people. It is overwhelming all the time. But this, I think, puts like a punctuation mark at the end of a statement that no, what we are experiencing is not going to be tolerated. It is not normal. And I would add, it is not only for Black people to look at what the conditions are here on the ground and not support it. It is for, again, allies to look at what is going on and also act accordingly and fall in line and hopefully support our cause, because that's what we do.
I'm with y'all. Look.
But the money talks. I agree with you. This is as close as they could come to saying we're not touching the pocketbook. We don't want to touch the pocketbook, Governor. We don't want to touch the pocketbook. But
that's what I'm saying. Like I'm a little bit like taken aback about that. Like just say if you don't want, like, I get it. If this is a call to solidarity, let's that's one thing, and I get it. But it could also be a call for economic boycott. It could also be a call to disrupt something that the state holds very near and dear to its heart, that the state needs to continue to operate, which is tourism. And you know what? That's okay too. I think that's okay too. Because
they're not telling you to do it, but if you do that, they've won as well. Do you understand?
But they give you enough reasons,
in their political, the capital that they're trying to spend here. They're not trying to destroy what is, the top two industries of our state. They're trying to say we want to bring awareness to what is really happening in such a way that, it cannot be ignored and just swallowed up into another headline and another headline. They wanted people to stop, pause, and think about it. There are people overseas now that are looking at this. And we know, again, tourism is a top industry here. And so to now call it out in this way may actually have the effect that you're talking about. May not be the intent, but it might actually have the effect that you're talking about. But they have to be very careful how they craft this message. So I think they have
to. I'm just asking because I want to make sure I'm clear on this. Why do they need to be very careful?
Because I can't speak for the NAACP, but we want the voter awareness, not the destruction of the industry, of the tourism industry. So
it wouldn't be the destruction of the industry, right? I mean, essentially, it could just be a hit. I don't think it will lead to the total destruction of the industry, but I'm wondering, like, it's like what the things that you're saying, the things that Mr. Russell has said, the things that you have explained. These are very serious situations that are happening. Anti-Black, anti-everything. It seems to me that's good for the culture. But if we're like, you can't. I'm trying to get wrap my mind around this, because Ron DeSantis moves like a serpent, right? But then when he does bite you, when he attacks you, you're gonna feel the full brunt of that. And so if we're in a dog eat dog type of political space that we find ourselves in, especially for those of you like yourself and others and down in Florida, somebody's going to have to bite back. That's
it's happening, Faraji. It's happening. So without
it's happening. Okay.
So without saying complete,
I don't want you to get no trouble,
y'all. This is
I know you in a lot of different spaces. But
the point is, this is making the business community nervous. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So we also have a role, right? But then there are those on the conservative side that also got a lot at stake if people stop coming to Florida as tourists. So there is pressure being placed not only by the left, but also by the right now, because now you're talking about people's dollars and people's pocketbooks and people's businesses. So there is this kind of slow motion kind of impact that is happening that I think is the intent of this type of statement and advisory, so that it's not if something happens, and I don't say that, and I don't mean to insinuate that the entire tourist industry will be destroyed, but if there is some kind of economic backlash that happens, oftentimes we Black people are going to be the first people impacted. But if there is even that threat, it causes a lot of people to stand up and pay attention, both on the left and on the right, and say, Governor, you're going to cost us more than what we
But shouldn't that be the intent,
type of policy.
But shouldn't that be the intent?
I think it is. There is more emotion than we know. I don't think the public facing statement must be clear. It is to galvanize Black voters. It is to make Black people aware of where they're going to spend their money and how it might impact them to come to a state that has been openly hostile. Now, there are going to be other consequences that will precipitate, but we got to be very careful because this organization has, such a high bar that they're not necessarily going to also say boycott, and then we don't have the impactful boycott that there should be. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, there are several ways.
No, I get that part.
So I think you got to be, I understand why they're trying to be more diplomatic about the economic piece, but what the real piece they're looking at is getting that disaffected, non-engaged voter to pay attention and say, look, this is happening on the state level, directly impacting your life, your livelihood, the way you conduct business, how your child learns, where you go to school, how that school voucher system. That's another thing that I think has not been said. While we're paying attention to the culture war issues, Mr. DeSantis is slowly wanting to gut public education. That's the real elephant in the room.
Here's what I'm saying. And I got to take another pause, but this is where it's like, you're going to find this to be funny, Suzanne. Like, if you come to me, and I'm saying as me as Faraji Muhammad, I'm the type of guy that I listen to you. I'm feeling your energy and everything. But if you come to me with a problem, I'm already in problem solving mode. I'm already like, all right, we got to figure this thing out, right? You're coming to me, you're telling me all the stuff that the government is doing, right? On behind the scenes, in front of the cameras, the whole nine. The man had a fumbled rollout of his announcement for being president. We're seeing all of these incidents we talk about on this show. Brother Roland talks about it on his show and in other spaces. We see these incidents of race and economics and poverty and all types of stuff is happening in the state of Florida. At some point, my problem-solving mind is going to be like, yeah.
We're done.
We're done. And trust and believe, I think a lot of culture crew members, I think a lot of us, from those who don't live outside of this state, we're like, yo, you know what? We actually would be supportive if the NAACP kicked off a situation of an economic boycott. People are like, I would go for that. Like, I don't have to travel to Florida. I would tell my family to not go to Florida. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just too much. Like when do we hit back? When do we stop allowing the other side, and I'm not just talking about GOP, I'm talking about an ideology as well. When do we stop allowing them to control the narrative, right? Where we're always on the defense versus on the offense. If they're hitting with these type of racist policies or policies that are not culturally that don't speak to the cultural interests of us, so okay, you want to handle this with that? I'm gonna hit you with your pockets.
Right.
No, like I'm not saying, look, I don't know the environment. I don't know the political landscape down
I think this is a move within that ballpark. It might not be as direct as perhaps some would want. But the point is, a colleague of mine, Marsha Ellison, who up the road in Broward County is the NAACP chair there of that county. Fort Lauderdale is the county seat. She has said her phones have been off the hook because people are now curious as to what is really happening and should they come.
People want to know what's the next step. It sounds like we're about to get ready for a showdown.
But I think the ball has been it's rolling, Faraji. It's definitely
rolling.
Yes.
Is it rolling up? Is it rolling down?
It's creating the movement that we need. Is the ball
rolling? Like Dr. King said, how justice will roll down from the hills? Is the ball rolling? We're ball rolling for justice.
It is. It is moving towards justice. That is the point. That's the intent of this type of move. It has gotten international coverage. We needed it. We needed it because we have been silent. So I agree with. I mean, on the grassroots level, you hear people pushing back, but this brought the national attention that it was designed to bring.
All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more conversation. Folks, crew, let me know what you take. Join us in the conversation. Post your comments on YouTube as we're streaming there. Of course, we're streaming on BlackStarNetwork.com and Amazon News. And stay with us. More discussion here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about NAACP travel warning for blacks, and my sister Suzette trying to her best. She's trying to let me know, hey, Faraji, stuff is happening. Okay, I'm cool. Trust and believe. I'm not trying to put nobody's life in jeopardy. Let's bring Suzette back in because I know she's laughing.
No, I'm just saying this is a good thing.
Look, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And this is why we have the show, right? This is why we have these spaces like your show, my show, everybody, Brother Roland's show, everybody's show, because we need to have a conversation about when certain things come down a pike like this. It's like, all right, how do we have this conversation? How do we make sure that we engage our people who are on the ground, who are understanding the dynamics of things? Because, look, to people outside of what's happening in Florida, and my brother, of course, Damon Blissett, he brought this up. He said, Faraji, I'm with you 100%. We are on the outside looking in on the state. To the outside, this guy, DeSantis, his administration, what's going on in Florida in general with the people, somebody needs to whip his ass.
Faraji. We don't promote violence.
I'm being look,
figuratively.
Well, you said figuratively.
I don't promote violence.
I mean,
you don't promote violence, but figuratively.
I'm not for no violence. But you know what? You cause violence to me. You cause violence to my people. Your policy is violent. So no, you didn't lift up a stick or pull out the gun, but you raised the pen to sign a violent policy. And guess what? That has more. I would rather you to hit me in my face. At least I can get past that. That takes a moment versus writing a policy into law that will take 10 years to unravel.
Understood.
So for me, it's like, if we are talking about, and I'm not saying we go into some space where people are unafraid. Again, you got to know I don't know what the landscape is. I don't know where Black folks are in terms of being fully prepared to take on the major act or action of doing a boycott. But from those of us outside the state, I can only talk for a few people. We like, hey, we will be supportive. Look, my sister Karen, she's a native of LA. She said that, let me see, Karen, you posted something. Hold on, I'm getting to your post real quick, Karen. Because you said it. Hold on, let me pull it up here. Let me pull it up. Karen, you said, as long as Florida refuses to teach Black history and discriminate against Black people, I will not spend money in Florida. See, that's what, I mean, that's the narrative that's being put out there right now.
Yeah.
That's the narrative that's being put out there right now.
And I'm not saying that's wrong. All I'm saying is the NAACP didn't necessarily call for that. But if that's where you feel, and therefore you're not going to spend your dollars in this market, we understand. We understand.
Right. Okay, so if that's not what the NAACP, and so since you said it, this is the term you use, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Yep.
But you said it is like splitting hairs.
Mm-hmm.
So if we interpret it that way, and if a lot of people interpret it that way, is the NAACP, are Black voters in Florida, are they recognizing that people are interpreted in this way? Are they prepared to move forward if something else comes down the pipe from DeSantis or some other force that is against our interests?
Yeah, it might be a good thing that it's being interpreted that way. This is a thing. Like, they can't say certain things. That doesn't mean that with the intent that they have stated was the reason to galvanize Black voters, doesn't mean that the desired outcome is not being achieved. So just because they can't say it, again, they have to be very careful in terms of their positioning. However, it is going to make a lot of people say, I'm not spending my money here. It is going to make a lot of people say, I'm not coming there for spring break. I won't go there for college, or whatever the case may be. We need them. We need folks to stand, come alongside us in this fight. This is a good thing. But what we're saying is the more important thing and the desired impact starts with the Black voter, those 3 million people sitting in Florida, many of whom who are not engaged in the political process. That's who we really want to reach by this. Now, other things may come about. Obviously, there are going to be consequences of this act. But we're saying, and again, I'm speaking we, but I'm just saying on behalf of the NAACP, you can read Mr. Russell's statement yourself. He's trying to clear himself from the economic piece and clear the organization from the economic piece and make it more about the political climate and trying.
But see, I don't know if we can do that, Suzette.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this in general. I don't know in modern day America, in modern day political America, can you separate economics from the politics?
I don't think you can. I'm just saying in their statement, this is what
I get what the statement is saying.
I'm to distinguish, but you're saying it's like a distinction without a difference. I get what you're saying. I'm not defending.
Right.
I just want to be careful that we're not promoting that that's what they wanted. We just have to be careful that they're staying on a target, which their message has been. Black voters are asleep, or we need to engage them far more based on the activity that we've been seeing. Why are we not seeing people in the streets? Why are we not seeing people hands down in Tallahassee all the time? But there are people who have, been on the front lines and are committed to the fight, but we need many more, especially here in Florida, to kind of pay attention and get ready for the next move, which, I'm sure will also have quite the impact when it comes to the 2024 election. So this was kind of a first move. I applaud them for doing it.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think Black voters What are black voters in Florida? What do black voters in Florida want at this point? What is the consensus, or what's the spirit of the black voter in Florida right now?
This is a very difficult question to ask. I'm in South Florida. We have different pockets that are regionally, different from what we are here. But I would say the economic piece, housing affordability, huge. The cost of living and inflation, huge. When it comes to what we're seeing as far as the political climate with regards to what is being taught in schools, we have a governor that is really extending vouchers, like ready to defund public schools. There are many of us who are not yet quite abreast of that movement, that are kind of like, well, I want to send my kid to a good school. Nothing wrong with that. But indirectly, it's causing a kind of a drain on the resources that would have been allocated to public schooling. That is really the underlying the great undoing that's happening in Florida that we're not paying attention to because of the culture war issues. But I would say economics are at the top of that. Jobs, high paying jobs. It is expensive to live in Miami. Most people, I remember I was trying to look it up, and I don't have it here for this show, but the averages of what the average black man in Florida makes and what the average black woman in Florida makes, it is next to, like, I don't understand how people can survive and they have children and have families and all these other things. So economics, I would surmise, is at the top of that list. And then we look at these cultural war issues where we see our history and our place within Florida politics really being marginalized and kind of taken away from us, setting us back. But again, there are a lot of people that are just trying to survive here. So they are not yet engaged in the fight. They have 2 and 3 jobs. They are working harder than the average person that, now I hear you. Paying wages, that they're just trying to kind of make their family work and survive day to day. So they're not necessarily involved yet in the political warfare that we're going to need, the engagement that we're going to need to get people, stirred up enough to get to that ballot box. That's the key. There's been a lot of discourse, but the action, especially because we're outnumbered in Tallahassee, Republicans have a supermajority because of redistricting. So anything they want to pass, they can pass. And the governor has had his way. That's what we've been seeing over the last, couple of legislative sessions here. But yeah, there are people that are like, "What? Who cares anyway? The governor going to do what he wants to do because they have the."
I mean, yeah, I agree.
People are very disaffected. So we have to find a way to say, no. You still have to show up. This is our power. Especially local elections, especially putting good people at the local level so that they can matriculate. Super important. But people feel like they're kind of in a losing fight. So there's a lot of people that we got to get kind of moving again so that we get the outcomes and hopefully reverse some of the damage. I will give you some hope for Raji. Right there.
All right, hold on. Before you get on hope, because I got to take this pause.
Sorry.
We got to take this pause because I want you to give me some hope late at the end of the show.
It's not all bad.
And no, that's what I'm saying. I need some hope to walk. I want people to walk away from this show, from this discussion, feeling hopeful. So let's. I want to make sure that we get some hope at the end of the show. But here's something else I'm going to throw in the mix before we take our next pause really quickly, is that as we're looking at what the NAACP is doing, what's happening in the state of Florida, how the Democrats are now saying, look, if we put a third-party candidate in the mix, it's going to throw us off. And even though they're showing data, and I'm going to share with you as we come forward, folks, when we come back from break, that when they're showing data that shows that the third party can derail another victory of a Democratic victory, I'm wondering, is this another strategy to keep black folks? Like, look, we are hurting. We are going through so much pain. We are being violated structurally through policy. And now you're putting out this information that says that, look, don't think about a third party candidate. Just put your hope back into the Democratic Party. And it's like, it feels confining for me. I have to admit that. It feels confining because we have been doing that. We have been doing that. And so now we're at a precipice in our sojourn here in this country that if we don't think about something bold and something out of the box, that we're going to miss out on the opportunity, not just for ourselves, before our children. So can we talk a little bit about that when we come back? Can we do that?
Yes, absolutely.
And still be hopeful.
Yes, we're gonna be hopeful. There's good news out of Florida too,
And
y'all.
still be hopeful.
I'm gonna give you some.
Absolutely. All right, good. All right, folks, stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Let me bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the fold here. Suzette, I wanted to throw this out there because, you know, as we talk about this travel warning, the fact of the matter is that we have so many political challenges that we are addressing right now, that the idea of us branching out, thinking outside of the box, being bold, being innovative, of having a third-party candidate in the upcoming 2024 presidential election is getting a little bit, is high enough where the Democrats are saying, hey, don't think about that. Don't think about it. Keep your eye on the Democratic ball here. Here's what's happening, folks. In a recent set of data coming out of the Democratic Party and shows that the third party effect, that's what they're calling the third party effect, may do more harm to Democrats than to Republicans. Take a look at the numbers here. This is coming from NBC News, where based on the data, in 2016, 6% of all voters cast ballots for third party and write-in candidates, with Libertarian Gary Johnson getting more than 3% of the national vote and Green Party nominee Jill Stein capturing more than 1%. The difference effectively changed the threshold the major candidates needed to reach to win key battleground states from 47% and 48% in 2016 to 49% and 50% in 2020. That, Democrats say, made it easier for Trump to win in 16, but not in 20. And the numbers illustrate why Democratic groups eyeing a possible, if not likely, rematch between Biden and Trump want to keep the third-party vote share as small as possible, including moving to keep the well-financed third-party group no labels off the ballot in battleground states. Comparing the results from 2016 to 2020, what stands out is that Trump's vote share nationally in key battleground states and in key counties stayed virtually the same, even as he won one election and lost another. What changed is that Biden grew the Democratic Party vote share by 2 to 3 points across the board, which is major, while the protest vote for other candidates dropped. So the third party candidate, as you can see there from NBC News, folks, it does more harm to Democrats than good for Democrats. It does more harm to the Democrats than it does the Republicans a little bit better. But here's the thing, Suzette. As the conversation among Black and marginalized people in this country, because this is not just among Black folks, you know, Latino folks and other folks are having these conversations about a third party because everybody's questioning the legitimacy of the Democratic and Republican Party. But the conversation is like, oh, well, no. Let's not think about a third party candidate. Let's not think about somebody because this will throw off. It takes a little bit of the fire from Black folks that want to see something
different.
So now you're trying to tell us like, oh, if you get a third party, it's going to ruin our chances of being in office. But you want us to kind of like wait on what from the Democratic Party? You see what I'm saying, Suzette? Do you feel my pain on this, sis?
I hear you, and I want to empathize, but I'm also going to kind of challenge a little bit.
All right, challenge me.
Because
challenge me, push back. I don't mind.
With love, my brother, with love. Because I look at it in a couple of different ways, and I do want to finish one little point in Florida, just for the hope's sake. Look at the election results from May 17th recently in Jacksonville, Florida, where if we kind of carve out these spaces where there are a lot of registered Democrats, but Republicans have been winning in Jacksonville, for example, for mayor for the last 30 years, with the exception of 4, this last election, they elected their first woman, who was also a Democrat, Donna Deegan. Millions were spent. But it's almost like going into a Republican stronghold and having a Democrat kind of take that seat among several others on the local level during that municipal election. There's hope for Raji. For her to win in Jacksonville, shout out to Donna Deegan winning by 52%. It was a major statement. So there are pockets of hope throughout Florida. And if we continue to build on models like what we just saw happen in Jacksonville due to the grassroots, knocking on doors, getting folks again who feel disaffected involved, we'll get better outcomes going into the future. I just want to mention, look at the Jacksonville results from this past May. To your point now with what you've discussed and laid out as the tragedy of the commons, if you will. Why are we all sticking to one party when in fact we should contemplate, as you've described, the possibility of another alternative when we don't feel our interests are being met? I would say to you, it's kind of like the intent versus outcome discussion we just had when it comes to the NAACP travel advisory. Now, the intent of a third party is to say, I'm assuming, for many who vote independently, I do not, but just for argument's sake, to look at what the field is offering, right? We're very clear right now that the American public, based on many polls, does not want another matchup of Trump v. Biden, but they're probably going to get that, right? 2/3, according to some polls, do not want either of these men to run again. But based on, the lay of the land, that's probably what we're going to get. So there's an idea that if we were to offer a third alternative, it would push the parties to act, differently or behave differently. But what tends to happen for Raji, even though we want, new voices that are outside of these kind of two alternatives to have a chance, the reality is if that third party emerges, it really doesn't have a chance to win. It just has a chance to be a spoiler. So even if the intent is to push either party to kind of reach into its grassroots and get away from, the beltway and the big bucks of the corporations and the large money donors that get involved in politics to the everyday Jane and Joe, that's not what ends up happening. It ends up being a spoiler that allows either a Republican or a Democrat, depending on the turnout, to win. So while I do kind of understand the idealism that goes behind, well, we need somebody new, what the effect is that when they turn out a lot in higher numbers, as we look at just the numbers that you pointed out between 2016 and the 2020 election, what made the difference for Joe Biden versus Hillary Clinton was there were less people that voted third party, and therefore a larger majority went to, in 2020's case, Joe Biden. So I understand the theoretical ideas behind this whole third party movement. But what ends up happening is either it costs the Democrats or sometimes it favors, depending on the swing state, Republicans. But we got to be very careful that we're not trying to, ride this, white horse into oblivion, because it literally causes the other party to win. I don't think Democrats have to say that. I think that's what the facts are. So we have to be very careful before we get on that.
Well, Democrats definitely said it. And I know this is a bigger conversation, but I wanted to just to put it out there because you're going to end us on today's show with some hope.
No, they say it, but it's the facts. That's all I'm saying.
No, it is the facts. I get that. I'm how long do we go along to get along?
I hear you. I hear you, sir. I hear you.
No, and you know, as I'm listening to you, you're making brilliant points. I just in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking to myself, I hear that. I think we've been down this road before. How long? And it doesn't mean it has to be mass anarchy. It just means that there has to be some breaking away. There has to be something like when do we just start to just slowly ease our way into something more independent? And I'm not talking about independent in terms of party. I'm talking about independent in terms of showing our power, showing our unity. Like, because this right here sounds like, hey, you can do the third party candidate, but I'm just letting you know the Republicans are going to win. And it's like sort of kind of fear-based. Whereas for Black people, our interest should not come from a place of fear. Our interest should come from a place of not just even survival, but should come from a place where we're thriving. And how do we thrive in this political landscape if we're finding, yes, obviously GOP is much more damaging to Black interests than the Democrats are, but we're waiting. And I don't know, like, I don't have generations to wait for liberation. I don't have generations to wait for economic equality. I don't have generations to wait for the women in my family to feel like they're on par with the men in somebody else's family. How long do we wait? How long do we go along to get along? Especially since we're seeing time and time again that I don't know how long do we wait. It's like the Dr. King, you know what I'm saying? Like what he was saying. How long? How long? How long? And this is not throwing us into a place of mass hysteria, but this is really asking the question, like looking at the landscape, are we willing to take some hit for the larger sake and the larger gain of independence, or are we just going to stay in a space of fear?
Yeah, I think we have to take a quick break, Roger, but I hear your points.
We're going to take a break. We're going to get off the air. That's the break we're taking. All right, I'm just throwing it out there, folks. And I know some people don't agree with me. I know, Corinne, I seen you. You were like, "Oh, this third-party talk is a bunch of BS." I get it. I hear you. But with the way things are moving right now, we're talking in circles. It's like if we get the right people, things will change. And then the right people come in, and then the system sucks them up, and they do very little. And then it's like, when we get the right people, we just got to go another 4 years. And I'm thinking to myself, like, do we have 4 years to sacrifice another 4 years? Ron DeSantis, for example, he just got reelected in 2022. He just got reelected last year. What happened? After all this stuff, and then it's like 2022. You're talking about 4 years of this dude. He's running for president while he's still being the governor. We're seeing stuff like this happening across the state. How much longer do we wait until we make a bold stand and say enough is enough? That's all I'm saying. Suzette, you got 30 seconds to make me hopeful. Come on, help us.
This is a wonderful discussion, Faraji. And again, I respect your points, and I know that there are people that have that sense of why are we all lined up like, as if this is sheep behind, the great leaders. But again, this has been tried time and time again. And I think I would encourage our viewers to look and do some research as to who's behind some of these third parties. I was looking into the No Labels party that is trying to get on ballots across the country, again, to serve, to me, again, my opinion, as a spoiler, not necessarily a valid competitor in any of these races. But again, who's behind these third-party movements? Just because there's a third party doesn't mean, again, it serves Black interests.
No, I agree with that.
A lot of people voting third party, not just us. Right. And again, they are trying to sway an election. We can't get around that. So we have to really look at kind of who's funding some of these third parties. And I think that will, that money trail will tell us, where we really need to be. So I appreciate definitely, though, your sentiments.
I appreciate you, Suzette Speaks. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Make sure y'all subscribe to her page. Follow her on YouTube, Suzette Speaks. She does a wonderful show. She's always bringing her insight, her brilliance to the conversation, and I'm happy to have her joining us here as a contributor.
Good to be back. Thank you, Faraji. I'll see y'all next week.
Absolutely, Suzette. Thank you so much. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Make sure y'all stay Tune up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. Go to blackstarnetwork.com, support us, share, and of course, follow us. Follow me, Faraji. You can find me on Twitter at Faraji and The Real Faraji on Instagram. Let's continue to build our community. I hope you enjoyed the conversations as much as I did. And more importantly, I hope it sparks some new thought for you and raise your consciousness about how you see yourself in the world. All right, folks, as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. And God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Peace.